Hi, everyone. My name is Yusuf Oluwafemi Salako, popularly known as Ori David, a 500 level law student of the University of Lagos. And you are welcome to my channel, the Ori David Consults channel. And today we shall continue with our discussion on corporate capacity and power in company. Remember that in our last class we interrogated what corporate capacity means and its connection to the doctrines of ultra vires in Nigeria. And I stated in the last class that we shall then continue with what corporate power mean. And today is the D-Day. So today we shall be looking at corporate powers, and we have also divided this lecture into two. The first arm is to consider the relevant provisions as far as the concept of corporate power or the topic of corporate power is concerned. Then the second part is to interrogate whether companies can participate in politics. And so, without further ado, I shall then proceed to expound on these two divisions, taking each one after the other. So, when we talk about corporate power, we're talking about the powers of corporations, of companies, in simple terms. But a proper starting point is for us to point out that power is different from capacity. However, despite this notable distinction, it should also be stated that power is also related and interconnected with capacity. Power and capacity intersect in the sense that power is what you need to reinforce your capacity. So every company that has capacity, as we have stated pursuant to section 27(1)(c) of CAMA, they require power. You will need power to give life to your capacity, to carry out your capacity as a company, because without power, then a company cannot act out its legal personality. Then on the question of corporate power under CAMA, the foremost provision are the provisions of section 38 of the Company and Allied Matters Act. And section 38 subsection 1 provides that except to the extent that the company's memo or any enactment otherwise provides, every company shall, for the furtherance of its authorized business or objects, have all the powers of a natural person of full capacity. Section 38 is simply saying that a company shall have the power of a natural person. That is, a company shall have the same power as you and I. But then it is important that we understand the legal implication of this section, which is that a company is a legal person. It must be noted that this provision, that is this power of a company being a legal person, is amenable to restrictions and limitations. Yeah, it can be restricted and it can be limited. This is on account of the tenor of the provisions of section 38(1), which provides, the introductory part said, except to the extent that the company's memo or any other enactment otherwise provides. So which means the power of a company as a legal or natural person can be limited or restricted by two entities. The first is that the company itself can limit its power, and if it should limit it, if the company must state it in the memo. So with the aid of the memo, with the assistance of the memo, the company can limit its power of a natural person. And it then says that any other enactment, which means a law can also limit the power of the company as a natural person. Enactment, CAMA, is also an enactment. So which means CAMA can also limit the power of a company as a natural person. And it will appear that CAMA that giveth also taketh. So the question is, what then can one make of section 38(1) in the light of the nature of legislations? Well, in simple terms, this section is a default provision. It's a default provision in the sense that it is a customizable and amendable and alterable provision. So what this means is this: you have a right by pursuant section 38(1), the power of a natural person, but then you can amend it, you can limit it, and when you do so, what do? You go ahead and impute it in your memo. So which means you can customize, you can amend, you can alter this power of a natural person. Now, it must be noted that in the discourse of corporate power, another relevant provision is the provisions of section 27(1)(d). Section 27(1)(d) provides that as part of those conditions that must be stated in the memo, the restriction of any of the powers of the company, to put it in a straightforward tone, this section should be read together with the provisions of section 38(1). So you must read section 27(1)(d) alongside with section 38(1). When you read it together, this is what you will get, and which is that a company has a power of a natural person, but you can limit it. That is, the company itself can limit it, and if the company should limit it, it must put or state so in the memo. So whatever, to the extent in which you have limited your power of a natural person, you must state that in the memo. Why? Because of section 27(1)(d), and it is, you must understand that section 27 is a mandatory provision because it contains the conditions that must be in your memo. So 27(1)(d) says, in the event that you have any restriction, you must state it in your memo. So I said that the presumption of this is that one's memo can limit one's power. Section 27(1)(d) has thus recognized that, and it provides that such restrictions, where in existence, must be stated in the memo. It is important to point out that this restriction, where extant, must be kept or stated in the memo because it is a condition. So I'm riding on the same on the back of a similar horse. Another relevant provisions are the provisions of section 40 subsection 1. This section is headed effects of reliance on restrictions in the memo. Remember that we said that you can restrict your power of a natural person, and section 27(1)(d) says then when you restrict it, keep it in the memo. So section 40 subsection 1 is now talking about the effect of reliance on restriction. That is, what is the effect when you want to rely on the restrictions of your power that you have stated in the memo. Said that the first point to be gleaned from this heading is that section 40 writes on the presumption that restrictions have been placed in the memo. If you have not placed restriction in the, remember that if you do not restrict your power of a natural person, then it won't be in your memo. It is only where they are in existence that 27(1)(d) says you should. So before you can basically activate section 40 sub 1, there must have been restrictions in your memo. So that is what I'm saying. Said the restrictions have been placed in the memo. So the question is, why is this so? It is submitted that it is because section 40 is cognizable of the provisions of section 27(1)(d) to the extent that a company's power can be restricted to certain extents. And then when you have now restricted it, then you must put it in your memo. Now, section 40 sub 1 ranges from A to D. That is, it is from section 40 sub 1 A to D. However, what is presently important to discuss are the provisions of section 40 sub 1 B and D. Section 40 sub 1 reads, it said, where there is a provision in the memo of a company restricting the power and capacity of the company to carry on its authorized business or object, the restriction may be relied on and have the effect only for the purpose of B provides that for the purpose of proceeding by the company or a member of the company against the present or former officers of the company for failure to observe any such restrictions. Or D provides that it will be relied on for proceedings for the purpose of restraining the company or other persons from acting in breach of the memo or directing the company or such person to comply with the memo. So I am stating and submitting that the legal effect of these two provisions, that is section 41B and D, is that any restrictions placed in the memo pursuant to section 27(1) subsection D on the power conferred by section 38 sub 1 are to be relied on for the purpose of instituting proceedings to challenge any form of deviations from the restrictions. This is as captured by section 41B and D. So what we are saying is that you rely on 41B and D simply when you want to challenge a company because you feel that the company is trying to trying to act contrary to the restrictions that have been placed in the memo. So I proceed to say that there is an overarching presumption, and it is that a company is bound by the content of its memo. Because yes, this is if you have any restriction, put it in your memo. And what is saying that if you want to go outside that restriction that you have kept in your memo, then you can bring an action, which says that you must show loyalty to your memo. And I said, hence, any restriction either placed by the company or any legislation, that is any enactment, must be strictly complied with to the letter. Section 40 sub 1 is another credence to the notion that a company can restrict its power. Yes, because it writes on the presumption that there exist restrictions pursuant that have been kept in the memo pursuant to section 27(1)D. The question, however, is, does the fact that the company has restricted its powers and reduced such into the memo, does it stop the company from acting contrary to the restrictions placed in the memo? What if it does? What are the legal consequences? No doubt that section 41B and D have both pronounced that such restrictions can be a pedestal of reliance for challenging any acts that are inverse to these restrictions. And the thing is that one might hastily be forced to conclude that what this implies is that a company must always show blind fealty and loyalty to the content of its memo, especially the conditions in the memo. However, it is important that you do not allow such a hasty conclusion to flourish, and because it reflects only a limited understanding and conceptualization of the provisions of CAMA as far as restriction of power is concerned. Now, this conclusion is informed by the saving provisions of section 39. You see, a lot has been said about section 39, and so it is not our desire to regurgitate all that has been said earlier on about section 39. What is notable about section 39 and of relevance to the present discourse is that section 39 is not only talking about capacity, but also talking about the power of the company. So what we are saying is that all that we have said about section 39 when it relates to capacity, they also apply to power. So which means section 39(3) now you can use to wriggle out of the clause of ultraviolence. You can also use same when it comes to power. So which means even if the company has kept a restriction in the memo, It doesn't mean that they have to always show fitting, because a third party can employ section 39 subsection 3. I said it can be gleaned from the words of section 39 sub 1, which provides that a company shall not carry on any business not authorized by its memo and shall not exceed the powers conferred upon it by its memo. So which means that section 39 sub 1 is not only on capacity but also on power, and everything relating to section 39 are on power as well. And so I said the effect of section 39 to the question whether one cannot act outside its powers, even where such has been fettered with restrictions in one's memo, is that everything that has been said to render the doctrine of ultra vires ineffective and redundant also applies to the issue of power. In essence, one can call on the provisions of section 39 subsection 3, section 69 subsection 1 to actually say, well, we kept a restriction there, but you find ways to actually avoid the rule of ultra vires applying to you. Now, the thing is that it is not clear whether the provisions of section 65B can save a company that has exceeded its power, as it would save if the company has acted out beyond its capacity. And this is because section 65B only provides for a situation where a company has undertaken acts in connection with business not authorized by its memo. The provisions did not go further, like the way section 39 subsection 3 and 69 sub 1 did, by providing that it should also apply where the company is attempting to exceed its powers. So what we are saying is that yes, when it comes to capacity, in order to avoid CAMA, we have told, like I said in our last video, if the company wants to act outside its capacity, well, the company does not need to throw its hands up in despair, because there are ways to actually circumvent the doctrine of ultra vires from being applicable to you. We talked about section 39.3, talk about 69.1, we spoke about section 65B. Now what we are saying is that section 39.3 is also applicable to power, because the whole of section 39 relates to capacity and power. 69 also talks can be used even where the company has kept a restriction to its power of a natural person, even if they don't want to follow it. If you should challenge it under section 40, the company can use 39.3 or 69. Now, what is not sure is whether the company can rely on section 65B. Why? Because when you look at the text of 65B, it only talks about where the company is doing acts that are not authorized at this capacity. It does not accommodate power. Now, so I said, by the uncertainty that beclouds the efficacy of section 65B as a saving provision, what is certain is that a company that has exceeded its powers need not to fret. I repeat, what is certain is that where a company has exceeded its powers, it need not to fret, as there is a deus ex machina for the company. So the question whether these saving provisions are unbridled is one that will be afforded further interrogation in the course of this discourse. So what we are saying is this: you don't need to show, a company does not need to show blind loyalty to the memo. So even when you have kept restrictions there are still ways that you can actually wriggle away from the chains of these restrictions from holding you down. At this junction, I must also say that some sections also deserve one or two comments to be made on them. You know that a memo is a document of enumerated issues. It is the constitution of the company. So you put issues there. But it is important to note that there are some issues that are required to be in the memo. What this means is that these issues are mandatory. That is, they must be contained in the memo. These are what we call the must ones. A memo is a document of enumerated issues. There are two types of issues that must be there: the must ones and the may ones. The must ones are the ones that must always be there. They must be in the memo. Every company must have them in their memo. And if you look at the most ones, they are the ones that are stated in section 27(1) of CAMA. And this is what the Act has labeled as conditions in section 44 subsection 2. So in section 44 subsection 2, it talks about conditions. And it says what are conditions are those requirements that must be kept in the memo pursuant to section 27(1), like the name of the company, you must state the nature of your business, 27(1)(c), and now 27(1)(d), where there are restrictions, you must state them. These are conditions. Now, so it provides that only these provisions which are required by section 27 of this act or by any other specific provision. Yeah, it is important that we stay calm at this point and interrogate the text of section 44 subsection 2. It says that what are conditions, that is the most ones, the issues, the most ones are those provisions that are required by section 27 of this act or by any other specific provision contained in the act. So which means that section 27 is not the only condition that must be stated in the act, because it said section 27 or any other specific provision. So there might be CAMA might also provide in another section that you must put this thing in your memo, and if it says you must state it in your memo, then it becomes a condition, and that is what section 44 subsection 2 is telling us. Now, it is also important said to be stated in the concern shall be deemed to be conditions contained in its memo. So which means 27 and any specific provision, you must put them in the memo as conditions. A curious question that comes readily to our mind with section 44 subsection 2 is whether section 38 subsection 1 is a condition or can be made a condition. I will repeat. I say that a curious question that requires our attention and legal analysis at this juncture is whether section 38 subsection 1 is a condition and whether it can be made a condition. In the sense that if it is a condition, that means you must state it in your memo. And if you should make it a condition, you must also state it in your memo. Because conditions are the most ones of the two issues that can be enumerated in the memo. Now, it is submitted that where the company has placed any restrictions on its power, such restrictions become conditions that must be stated in the memo in full compliance with section 27(1)(d), thereby dressing it up as a condition. In essence, you can make section 38(1) a condition. How? By placing a restriction on the power that you enjoy as a natural person. And how do you place it? How do you place a restriction? Remember that the introductory words of section 38(1) says that it is subject to any enactment, the provisions of any enactment or the content of your memo. So which means if you have a restriction to your power, you must have stated it in your memo pursuant to section 27(1)(d). So which means as part of the issues in your memo, the restrictions that you have stated there will be there. It must be there. So which means you are making section 38(1) to be a condition. And that answers the question whether a company can make section 38(1) to be a condition in the affirmative. So it then tells you that the most ones, that is the conditions in your memo, are not only limited to what? To as the provisions of section 27 alone, because it says or any other provisions in the act. So you can use section 38(1) as any other provision, and then the company can make it to be a condition in the memo. But the question is, can you go against or can you act contrary to these conditions? Yes, because where you place the restrictions, we have told, as I've explained earlier on, all the ways to avoid the shackles of ultra vires. 39, 3, the whole of 39, 69, you can also use them for power. So when you place restrictions, you are not bound by the restriction. So I said another relevant question to interrogate is on the nature or character of the conditions in the memo. Yes, it said keep conditions. Yeah, what is the nature of conditions in the memo? Are they amendable? Another way of putting the question is whether these conditions are default provisions, since default provisions are provisions that are amendable. Now, with respect to this question, section 44 subsection 1 provides that a company may not alter the conditions contained in its memo. A company may not alter the conditions contained in its memo except in the cases and in the manner and to the extent for which express provision is made in this act. Another way of putting this provision is that a company may alter the conditions in its memo, but it must be in line with the provisions of CAMA. So it tells you that you can alter conditions, but you must follow the words of CAMA in doing so. Now, the provisions of section 45 is on alteration of memorandum. It's generally on alteration of memorandum. But remember that a memorandum, as I said, is a document of enumerated issues. So you have the most ones, that is the conditions and other issues that have been kept there. So, but section 45 is generally on how to amend a memo. And it tells you that since you can amend the memo, it means you can amend the conditions in the memo. So I'm saying that section 45 further gives support to the foregoing conclusion that you can amend conditions in the memo. So you read section 44 sub 1 and section 45 together, and what do you get? You get the conclusion that you can amend your conditions in your memo, because memos and articles of association are alterable documents. You didn't get that? I'm saying that memos and articles of association are alterable documents. You can alter them. You can alter them the same way you can alter the conditions in the memo. Now, section 45 provides for the processes or procedures to be followed on altering these conditions. Remember that section 44 sub 1 says a company may alter the conditions. A company may do what? A company may alter the conditions, but subject to the provisions of the act. So section 45 has now provided for ways or procedures that you must follow before you will be able to alter your conditions. So I said section 45 reveals that it is concerned with how these conditions can be altered. Said this CAM peruser. What I'm pointing out, I said the provisions of section 45 on alteration of a memorandum gives support to the foregoing conclusion. Section 45 provides for the processes to be followed in altering these conditions. Now, I'm saying that a CAM peruser of the 5 subsections of section 45, because there are 5 subsections of section 45. So I'm stating that a CAM peruser of the 5 subsections of section 45 reveals that it is concerned with how these conditions can be altered. So what I'm saying is that it may appear that section 45 is only on how you can alter conditions and not generally how you can alter a memo. And that's why I said you must read section 44 and subsection 44.1 and section 45 together. However, I'm saying that if this CAM peruser of the 5 subsections of section 45, if it is truly CAM, it will also reveal that section 45 isn't only about altering conditions. Why? Because section 45 subsection 5 provides that subject to section 49 of the Act, any other provisions of the memo may be altered in accordance with section 46 of this Act. So it means that section 45 subsection 1 to 4 deals with conditions, how to alter these conditions. But section 45 subsection 5 provides that you can also alter any other provisions. That is, there are no conditions, any other provisions, you can alter them subject to section 49 and in accordance with section 46. So I say clearly section 45 subsection 5 has let the cat out of the bag that a memo contains 2 issues. The most ones are the main ones. I repeat, a memo contains 2 issues. The most ones and the main ones. The most ones are the conditions, while the main ones is what we refer to as other provisions. So the question now staring grimly at us is, what are the other provisions that may be accommodated by the memo? One of such provisions is one of such provisions is section 288 subsection 1 of CAMA. Section 288 provides that in a limited company, the liability of the directors or managers or the managing director may, if so provided by the memo, if the liability is provided by the memo, be unlimited. So I'm saying that although this section, when you look at this section, it talks about, or substantially it talks about the empowerment given to a company to make unlimited the limited liability of the category of people mentioned. It is without doubt that there is an underlying presumption that this power to do so has been stated in the memo. Consequently, this is not a provision required by the Act to be stated in the memo, and so doesn't qualify as conditions that it shows that you fall under the rubric of other provisions. So what we're saying that section 2, when section 288 subsection 1 provides that, you can limit the power or the interest of some of these people, that is the director, the managers or the managing director. So you can make their unlimited power, you can make it to be unlimited. Now what we are saying is that if you do so, it means that you must have stated it in your memo, and if you should state it in your memo, then it means that it is not a condition, because it is not a must that it must be stated in the memo. So it's not the must ones that is conditions that will be stated in the memo. It's part of the any other provision, that is the may ones. Now I said section 288 leaves one with a question. How should a company go about making the liability of its directors, managers, or the managing directors unlimited? How? If it's limited already, how do you go about making it unlimited? Yes, no doubt that section 288 provides that by putting it in the memo, just state it in the memo that, well, the unlimited, what was initially limited, make it unlimited. Just go and put it in your memo. But is that all? This is because section 289 answers in the negative. Section 289 subsection 1 provides that a limited company, if so authorized by its articles, a limited company, that is, the company is limited in the sense that the interest of the managers, MDs and the rest